Thank you, Sandra, Portia, Grace, Gloria, and Gustavo for that informative presentation. In today's rapidly changing social media landscape, building a movement can seem like quite a daunting task. However, it is not impossible. In fact, social media presents a unique opportunity to reach millions of people who are interested in understanding the world and making a difference. As shown by the Me Too and Black Lives Matter movements, these initiatives that start online can have a lasting impact on the real world, with far-reaching consequences that alter the way we think about topics such as race and gender. This Charla with industry leaders is designed to help you learn about these influential platforms to build relevant movements. Moderating this panel is Sandra Sertel, North America lead of LinkedIn's Hispanic Employee Resource Group. Joined by Amelia Gutierrez, Politics and Government Outreach Manager for Facebook, and Reggie McCrimmon, Senior Public Policy Associate for Twitter. Now to you, Sandra.
Thank you all for joining us today. Very excited to be talking about this very important topic. We have Amelia Gutierrez, who's a Politics and Government Outreach Manager at Facebook, as well as Reggie McCrimmon, a Senior Public Policy Associate at Twitter, and myself, who's a sales leader and also a North America lead for our LinkedIn ERG. Thank you. And so we'll kind of get this conversation started with first question. What are some of the characteristics of an impactful social media movement from your perspective?
Absolutely. Sandra, if you want, I can just jump right in. I'm so excited to be here. I've been at Facebook now a little over 2 years. And with my role, I get to work directly with advocacy organizations, helping them really understand Facebook's tools, whether it's Facebook itself, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, and how to really use those tools to advance their advocacy work. But for me personally, before coming to Facebook, I worked in the advocacy space myself, and I led our digital team at Amnesty International. So definitely understand coming from that perspective of how do we use these platforms to build a movement. But I would just say, to dig in, and I know Reggie will have a lot to offer as well, is that, some of the most important things that I would say are, one, to tell your story. Right now, there are so many things going on in the world. Fortunately and unfortunately, there's a lot of ways to get involved, a lot of ways to show activism. So it's really important that organizations and movements tell their story. What is it that you're doing? Why is it unique? And why is it important? So I would say that's number one. And then number two, I would say, and this I see a lot of organizations do really well and some miss, is always give people something to do. People want to have agency, especially now. So being able to understand the issue, being able to understand why it's important, but most importantly, being able to understand what they can do, what agency an individual has, what can I do myself to help make this movement matter, is really important. So whether that's asking them to make a phone call to their member of Congress, sign a petition, send a tweet, post something on Facebook, really important to give people some agency and get them activated.
Thank you for that. Reggie?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate this opportunity. Reggie, with Twitter's public policy team based out of DC, have the opportunity to work not only with our elected officials and policymakers, but also with third parties, civil rights, civil society organizations who do the great work every day with the proximity to the organizations they serve on the ground, which is really one of the most exciting parts of our work. Also, helping with some of our philanthropic work here in the US as well. Similar to my industry peer and colleague, I've been on a couple of panels with before, at least one other panel before. I would agree, I come from a background of working on the Hill and also being a consultant, working with different advocacy organizations. And the thing that I would add would be around, authenticity. People engage with what they feel is real and feels like it's something that they just can't get through traditional media outlets as well. I'll also add that healthy engagement is really important now, and folks are looking for ways, especially people and organizations who are in communities that are having a really difficult time identifying resources or speaking up or having their voices heard. They want to engage with folks who are authentic, but also those who have healthy intentions in mind as well. And so they're engaging in a healthy way on the platform. And we definitely love to see that at Twitter as well. And the only other thing I will add as well is that call to action, like Amelia said, is extremely important. Really thinking about not just informing your constituents or folks that you're trying to engage with, but giving them something to do and making it as easy as possible for them to engage. And so you really want to make sure that if it's embedding directly a photo that you want them to share, then say, hey, if you believe in this, retweet this. Or if you want to raise awareness on this, share this photo. You can additionally do things, like adding a poll. We want to know how you feel. Tell us, would you do A, B, or C? Do you agree this should be the way that things should be? Do you disagree? Say yes or no. Let that congressperson know how you feel. You can add a poll into your tweet in order to be able to do that as well. And of course, nowadays you can embed live video or go live on Twitter Spaces as well to have a conversation with folks, engage with them directly, and be able to pull them into the conversation. And you're starting to see really authentic engagement around those areas as well. So being authentic, doing it in a healthy way, giving them a call to action. You can't go wrong there. And if you're going to build a movement, something that lasts beyond just a moment, those are 3 areas I think you can engage in.
Thank you so much, both of you, for that. So I think one of the common themes that I heard from both of you was the authenticity piece. So telling that story and really truly being authentic. It's so interesting that even virtual or on social media, that the audience can pick up on that. One thing that you mentioned, Reggie, really stands out to me. You mentioned healthy engagement. Can you expand on that a little bit, just to kind of give the audience a little bit of an idea of what that might be?
Yeah, I think we all know, sorry, you hear my ESPN app in the background. I think we all know that now with so many difficulties arising across the world in regards to whether it's, health concerns on physical health, mental health, concerns around physical well-being in regards to situations of war and so many different conflicts around the world. It's okay nowadays, and it should be that we are all advocates of peace and of healthy, conversation. And we at Twitter, our role is to serve the public conversation. And to do so, we believe we have to build trust with our users. And how you build trust? By making sure that we're promoting healthy conversations with everyone. And so everyone has a role to play in doing that. One of the things that I often see in working with activists and really helping with some of their accounts is, sometimes you want to offer a counter speech to some of the information you're seeing online. You want to be able to offer a counter argument, if you will. This is the beauty of free speech and the ability for you to engage in conversations and to speak to folks in the space who you might not agree with. There's a healthy way of doing that, of offering counter speech, of offering information that you believe is critical for elected officials to see, or for organizations to see, a research paper that you might think would really help people think thoughtfully about this. We saw a lot of this when it came to race relations in the United States, particularly of people sharing, information about biases that we might have, or information about community relations that we might want to consider, and best practices that we're seeing. There are healthy ways of doing so. And I think that all of us have to be ambassadors for that type of information across the board. And I think, where we're seeing some of the most engaging content is not just from people who have, quote unquote, verified accounts that have millions of followers. We're seeing from young activists who are saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing on the ground, and I'm recording a video with my friend to talk about what we're experiencing, and doing so in a way that can de-escalate the situation and invite people in. I see a great content in that, and really encouraged by those who are doing that as well.
Thank you so much for that. Amelia, anything to add on that?
No, absolutely. I think Reggie's right. It's, when we say the word activism or activist, it means so many different things to so many different people and so many different cultures. And I think we're just really lucky, and it's exciting to be in a time where these platforms really provide voice to a lot of people who might not otherwise have that agency. And so, you don't have to be a giant organization. You don't have to have a 501c3 status. You don't have to have an executive director. You don't have to have a big, ads budget. I think it's really exciting that we are seeing people come out, share their own personal experiences of how they're affected by these issues, why they care about them. And it's no wonder that people gravitate towards that. So it's just it's an exciting time, and I think a lot of these tools, especially Reggie mentioned on Twitter and on Facebook as well. Thinking through how people can share their own stories. We see a lot more video. People really coming face to camera much more and being more open. And it takes a lot of courage for activists to do that. And it's definitely an inspiring time to see activism take shape, and we need it. So couldn't come at a better time.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of, putting content out there and really being very active on social media, what would you say are some of your favorite social media platforms? There might be a little bias there, I get that, or accounts that promote social justice issues effectively.
Absolutely. So I'll just, I'll share some of the groups that I work with. I mean, LULAC, I think, does an incredible job, truly. I know we're talking to LULAC members today, but I think LULAC does a really incredible job of sharing the story and really highlighting the people behind your organization. So I think that's really incredible. During the election, we worked a lot with groups like Voto Latino or United We Dream, who would share really relevant voter information, keep people updated. I think that's a really valuable role that organizations have to play, who have an authoritative voice and can share resources really quickly. And then, I'll just share, coming from Amnesty International, we really always try to share that international perspective of human rights and take issues that were very complex. I think we're seeing that today with what's going on in Afghanistan, et cetera, and really try to distill it. Because I think that's the other challenge, is some of these issues are so challenging to really grasp. There's a lot of information. And so having organizations that you follow and having them really think through, how do we share really complex information in bite-sized pieces so that our audience can understand is really important as well.
I love that. So kind of keeping it simple so they can digest. Reggie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Of course, we love our friends at LULAC. I think the power that you all have and everyone has is, you have abilities to reach folks outside of what we always think about national reach, and really thinking about how do you engage specific communities, because the needs may be different. And so I really like when I see national organizations that have local chapters and they find a way to tie in their information to their national headquarters, right? And so we see a lot of that both with LULAC, but also with Unidos US. We see a lot of that with the National Urban League as well, where they have affiliate chapters across the country, and we're looking at ways to engage those individual local communities. And so I really like to see that on Twitter and those different efforts. Right now, we're really focused on and continue to be focused on playing our role and doing our part to provide reliable information around COVID-19, as this is still the pandemic that we're in, not only just here in the US, but in all across the world. And so we are trying to promote reliable health information for especially communities of color that really need to have the appropriate information and reliable health information online. And so really working with so many different minority organizations to make sure that we are, making it easy for doctors to reach out to folks. And so I'm really finding a lot of doctors online that we are saying, hey, we would love for you to do, an activation or do a Q&A online. We would love for you to do that. We just did one this past weekend with Dr. Fauci, where he did a Twitter Q&A. He's probably one of my favorite accounts, the CDC account as well, the World Health Organization as well, continuing to work with them to make sure that reliable information is out there, and we're exploring creative ways for them to engage on a regular basis with people directly, as we know that what we're finding is that folks are more apt to accept health information from direct sources where they can engage with that might not come directly through an advocacy organization, but maybe a doctor that they have encountered or heard from, or that their mother might have followed or have respect for in their community. And so we're finding ways to get creative about engaging with those accounts. And so that's some of the content I'm enjoying now.
Well, thank you for both of you for sharing that. And now, let's switch the spotlight a little bit. So let's talk about creators. What would you say are some of the challenges that content creators of color face when trying to promote social justice issues on social media platforms?
I'll jump in and start out. I think, as I mentioned before, there are often times where, many creators are also activists who want to speak truth to power. They want to say, this isn't something we agree with. We want to make sure our voices are heard. And so we have to, one of the concerns that I see is sometimes when they're offering counter speech, we have to understand the context of which they're using that speech. And how it might relate to very heightened events at times. And so just give you an example where there are, this past couple of summers, we've seen demonstrations across the country in different communities, and we've seen activists and creators who are saying, hey, we're going to organize and meet in this particular spot, and we want others to join us there. And sometimes that information, as we seek to, protect the privacy of certain individuals or public individuals or spaces that you're in, we try to make sure that everyone continues to have that right and we keep folks safe. And so for creators as well, they're just or making videos or publishing what's happening on the ground, and we want them to stay safe, right? We want them to be safe so they can engage in those activities, but also make sure that they can abide by what's happening there and have a healthy conversation. And so that's one that we are always concerned about, the safety of those who are engaging and being creative. And then also how they're offering that counter speech or speaking truth to power on the platform. We want to make sure we understand their context. We want to make sure that, if they decide to promote or to put advertising dollars behind some of their work, right? We do have a political ads, content ban on political ads. And so making sure that their ads, that they're in compliance with our new policies, which, aren't always easily understood from the outside, but we want to engage with them directly to help them and make sure that their message is getting out there in a healthy way. And so sometimes it's a challenge because, the rules are changing and, folks are seeking to engage in more creative ways. And so really working with creators in a way that, get them access online in a healthy way.
Perfect. Thank you. Emilia?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Reggie hit a lot of the right points. I think anytime someone is sharing their story on social media, they're going to face challenges. And I think that's, 10, 20 times magnified for people of color. So it really, it can be a challenging space for a content creator of color to get on our platforms, share their story, share things that are really personal, maybe about why they care about a certain issue or how they're affected by a certain issue. And so, some of the things that Facebook has launched is we do things like comment moderation. You can turn comments on and off. We have filters. So if you want to filter certain words or phrases, or we call them our profanity filters in our settings, you have that control as well. And then to Reggie's point about safety, we always want to make sure that people have the ability to report any sort of harassment they're facing in app. So, there's a really easy way to do that on Facebook, on Instagram, both at the profile level and also all the way to the comment level. So we've really tried to give people control over how much conversations happen on their own platforms, because it really does vary by person. And, as Reggie noted, sometimes that counter conversation is really helpful. Sometimes people really gravitate towards that. Other platforms, personally, I'm like, no, I don't want to hear any comments. So, I have more control over, you can have more control over those types of things. But absolutely, I think we're indebted, especially at Facebook, across our channels, to content creators, right? We're really seeing people use our tools and products in exciting ways that maybe we launch with a certain idea in mind and people really take it to the next level. So, I think all content creators, that comes with challenges, but certainly we know that our content creators of color face that probably 10 times fold, and we're always trying to do better.
Thank you for that. And you called out something very, very important, and it's a level of vulnerability that happens, right? So we already have all these uncertainties about ourselves and all of that. So really putting it out there for the public to see makes us very vulnerable. And I think, personally for me, kind of gets in my own way. Even being on a platform like LinkedIn, I'm like, ooh, do I really want to put myself out there and bring potentially, negative and harmful? So there's a little bit of, you have to be somewhat a little fearless when doing that. And same thing with LinkedIn right now. We're also really just focusing on that content creation, and we want to hear from the people of color and just all of their experiences. And so as people are starting to, let's say we get brave enough and they say, I'm going to start posting more often and I want to start creating this content. What would you say are some mistakes that organizers make with their content production when building a social media movement?
Well, Sandra, I was also going to add to your last comment, because I know that, as a woman of color, I do feel like there's a shift. Like, I feel like as of, the last couple of years, you see people kind of be more bold and vulnerable on social media. And especially that's true on Facebook, on Instagram. And whether it's things like, here's a selfie with me without makeup, or here's, a fitness account that shows, no, the reality of, the hard work it took to look like this, or whether it's, what being a young mom looks like. I just feel like there's so much more of that. And I hope that's a trend that continues, because it definitely makes you kind of stop and think and say, okay, not everything has to be glamorous and fully produced and, 100% perfect before you can share it. And, I would just say that's really the biggest mistake I see people make, is thinking that you have to have this polished look, this 100% fully cultivated brand, that you have to wait until you have X amount of followers, or until you're blue check verified to really share your story. And so that's one of the things we really encourage people that we work with to think about is, what, it can be scary to go live, but just try it. Or it can be scary to, to share, to do face to camera on stories. But, these tools are kind of meant to be utilized. And so, yeah, I would say with content production, one of the biggest mistakes I see is just kind of waiting until people feel like it has to be 100% polished and perfect before sharing it.
Reggie?
Yeah, same. I'll say authenticity is great, engaging on content that you find relevant to you and that you can speak authentically about. Oftentimes I wouldn't recommend, just following hashtags to add all of them in and having about 10 hashtags to engage and just to put your 2 cents in on this particular item that's happening. I see great engagement on issues or areas where that individual has an authentic feedback on. I would recommend in choosing 2 to 3 hashtags to put in there. I would also put out there just native embedding of videos directly into your feed. You want to prevent the different clicks. I know it's tough. Everybody wants to get all of the different sites on as with one post, but we like to say that extra step of embedding authentic or natively will increase your engagement on Twitter a lot. And so if you're going live on any of the platforms, taking that next step to posting them directly and natively, that decreases folks from having to click through a link and then, clicking 2-3 times in order to access your content. Posting your photos natively as well is one where you'll see an increased engagement if you're using Twitter to do so. And so, yeah, I think those are some of the areas where I see often where creative producers are engaging in. What else would I say? I would say at Twitter, we're like, it's look at this, right? Not necessarily always look at me, right? Like, look at what's happening in my community. Look what's happening around me. Look what's happening or drawing attention to an issue. It's not always, look at, what I'm doing right now in this moment. And so we're starting to see far more engagement. We saw, the Black Lives Matter movement over the past year has been probably the most engaged hashtag ever. And it's been, if you look at the content, you're seeing what's happening in communities around the world. We're seeing similar in so many different markets. So, native, engagement and including that information directly into Twitter, we've seen, great results from that as well.
It's almost like they put on a marketer hat. So how can you make it easy for people to engage with the content that you're putting on? So the less clicks and native embedding of like your photos and all of that. Thank you both for that. And why would you say social media right now is becoming more important than ever to build social justice movement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I think it's important now. And I would say this question was relevant, 5 years ago, and it'll be relevant in another 5 years. The thing that stands out to me is when we think about social media and social justice, I mean, these are both things kind of centered around people and centered around connection and centered around, bringing our world closer together. And so I just feel like, whenever I'm talking to an organization who maybe doesn't know how to invest resources or is kind of just starting to touch their toes into social media, I really encourage them to really invest, because we know that this is where our audiences are. I mean, we have billions, literally billions of people using Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger every single day. And so we know that this is where our audiences are. This is where people are communicating. This is where they're sharing their stories. This is where they're getting their news. So if you're building a social justice movement, it's really important that you're in that space also. And then additionally, I would say one of the really incredible things is that we're able to connect and see and work and strategize and organize with people literally all over the globe instantly. And I think that's really important for issues that are both international and local, because it really starts to make our world a lot smaller, and it really helps us to understand these issues that really span communities and span continents and span borders. So I just think it is really important for us to be thinking about it in this new global perspective. And again, I think really it just comes down to the ability for people to be really authentic, to have a platform that's free, that's accessible. You don't need to have a lot of money. You don't need to have a lot of, organizations behind you. Literally, you can share your story and become part of that social justice movement pretty instantly.
Thank you. Reggie?
Yeah, I'll add, we similar, we knew this before. We saw the power. It's why our platforms have done so well and continue to grow, because our ability to be social digitally has been important, and it's been something that was missing, right? You had to go through a traditional media outlet to get your voice out there, and so our social media sites, Twitter, has been a huge part of movements that have taken off. And I will say, additionally, if we're looking at intersectionality and global movements, we're starting to see communities engage across different markets. And so we're seeing folks in Ferguson connect with, advocates in the Middle East. We're seeing so many different things that we knew that exist, challenges that we're all, facing in different markets across the world. And we're providing a service and a way for folks to engage directly. And so, unfortunately, COVID had to demonstrate the importance of having a digital infrastructure, if you will, to be able to activate folks socially. But we should listen to this moment about what it means for our organizations and our ability to thrive over time, right? We typically would be engaging directly, at LULAC, at the conference, there physically, right? But the show must go on. We have to continue to do our work in our communities, and these are ways that we can do so. And so we just need to dig our heels in a little bit here and really make the investments where we can, to support each other, socially online. And so the proof has been in the past couple, months, right? We have really had to think about how we get a little bit more, savvy in our engagement across the boards and connecting with people authentically and directly. And so now more than ever, every organization, every activist, every creator has to think strategically about their social media presence.
Thank you for that. And so I think both of you mentioned the reach, right? Just by being on a social platform, you can reach globally just by posting and creating and sharing some of that content. Okay, so now we got the audience bought in. Everybody's gonna go and create content. What would you say are some resources available for LULAC members to learn how to effectively organize and produce that content on social media?
Yes, absolutely. We have a ton of resources at Facebook. some of them that I'll share here, and I'll make sure, Sandra, that LULAC has them to share the links with people who are listening. But we have a number of different resources that I'll share specifically, I think will be helpful for groups in the government, in the politics, and especially in the advocacy space, since I know that's a lot of folks listening in today. But the first one is facebook.com/GPA. And GPA just stands for Government, Politics, and Advocacy. This is really our hub where we share resources. So you'll find things like blogs, one-pagers, trainings that we've done, resources, guides that really just walk you through everything, all the way from all of our different products, all of our new products coming up, blog posts where you hear from actual partners who can share case studies, all the way to sort of tips and tricks, and really how to lean in and understand not only our products, but also our policies, which is really important. The other one I'll share is facebook.com/business/learn. And again, we'll share all of these after this session, so you all can have the links. But this is where you can find all of our blueprint courses. So if you're looking to learn any sort of technical, like how do I do this on Facebook, especially in the ad space. So I would put this plug in if you're thinking, okay, I want to start running an ads program, I don't know how to get started. This is another great resource for you. And then lastly, I'll share the link to our Facebook group. So this is www.facebook.com/gov-politics. And again, I'll share the link, but this is our Facebook group. So this is a place where people, practitioners, digital strategists, people who are actually kind of in the weeds on using Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and Messenger for their advocacy work and their political work and their government work, can share with each other. And we also share trainings, resources, guides, best practice tips. And it's also probably the best place to get any sort of updates. So we try to keep people really updated, since I'm sure you all know our products are always changing and evolving. And I feel like there's always something new we're launching that I can't keep track of. So making sure that you all have that as well.
Yep, and similar here for Twitter, you can go to business.twitter.com/resources. And you'll find there resources based on your organization size, things that you might be interested in, from best practices, not only for you, but if you have an agency that you work with, for them to engage, for small businesses that you might frequent on a regular basis and you think that they have been supportive to the movement and you want to make sure that they have information, you can do that as well. And then I know also, going live on Twitter and making sure that you have the ability to do so and using Media Studio in order to do so, that information is there as well. We also do quarterly trainings for nonprofits, and I do trainings on a regular basis. We're all ambassadors for best practices, and so we like to engage. You can follow, we break news, of course, on Twitter first. So if you go to @nonprofits on Twitter, you follow us at @nonprofits, you'll be able to see updates and some of the cool things that we're working on there.
Thank you so much. So all very helpful resources that we'll be sharing out afterwards. Okay, so we got the audience bought in. They're like, yes, I'm so RevDev. I know where to go. I'm going to create this great content. Now I'm going to go post it, but I don't have a lot of followers. So how would you say LULAC members can gain more followers on their social media accounts to convey the missions and platforms of their local organizations?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. It's a question we get all the time. I will say, whenever people come to me and say, how can I get, 10,000, 100,000 followers? I do try to talk to people a little bit and really remind them that it's hard to not be focused on size. Size is important. Scale is important. You want to be reaching your audience, and likely that's a large audience. But I also like to remind people that engagement is really important also. And so while I think having that size metric is helpful, I always try to tell people, look at size, but also look at engagement. And the reason for that is that our platforms at Facebook are meant to be places where people engage with each other. So if you're just putting information out there, broadcasting it, but you're not working on ways to actually cultivate your audience and engage with them, then I think you're kind of missing half of what our platforms are really so great about. So that's one. Two, I would say, just be really clear about the story you're telling. It can be very hard, especially today, to not want to comment on everything, to post about everything, to, kind of dig into everything, but really take a step back and say, what am what's my unique value add? What am I bringing to the conversation? And what is it that I want to share? What's the story that I want to be telling? And then lastly, I would say, just really take advantage of the interactive tools that are available. Facebook and Instagram has launched a lot of these with the idea of engagement in mind. So things like using the Q&A sticker, the poll sticker, soliciting conversations, using stories, going live. These are all things that are meant to be tools that help you kind of have that engaging conversation and create that two-way street with you and all of your followers. So, and then lastly, I would say people really want to be heard. So sure, there are accounts that I follow just to get information, but most of the time, if I'm engaging, it's because I want to feel like I have some agency and I have a role in this conversation to play. So making sure that your audience understands that you're listening to them, you're responding to them, you're hearing their needs, and you're, cultivating and creating content for them is really important as well.
Really don't have much to, ditto. Just apply all of that on Twitter as well. One thing I would highlight is it's a two-way street. You can't just have the megaphone and just get on your soapbox and just say what you want to say and then log off and that's it, right? So oftentimes when we work with organizations and they say we want to get our followers up, then it's pretty clear that, hey, you've had your messages, you get on, you say what you want to say, and then there's no engagement. Replying with people, talking to people, engaging with them. That's how you're going to start to see folks engage. We like to highlight internally. It's kind of like an internal joke, but not a joke. We like to highlight accounts with like 10 followers that go viral. And because they just really tapped into a moment where they said something that we were all thinking, it was so authentic in that moment. And I bookmark them and share them in best practice presentations all the time to demonstrate that sometimes if it's authentic, if it's relevant, and I will point out timing is important as well. If the new documentary on your issue came out on Netflix last night and you waited till this morning to talk about it, or in 2 weeks to talk about it, you might have missed the moment where everyone was watching this documentary that touches on your issues and you can have a conversation in real time. Timing is important. So the last thing I'll add to Amelia's points is think about timing and think about when's the best time for you to post this, and you can actually gauge those analytics, I'm sure on Facebook, but also at Twitter. You can go to analytics.twitter.com. And we'll tell you when it's likely the best time to post based upon the engagement of the folks that already follow you. So, take care of the followers that you have, reply with them, engage with them, do so in an authentic and timely manner. And you'll begin to see your following increase over time. And if it doesn't, you'll have a really engaged following of folks that you already have and that you enjoy, and continue to work with them, and you'll start to see better engagement. It's about engagement, not just numbers.
Yes, thank you for that. And so again, I heard that theme of authenticity. So not only being authentic with the content that you create and you post, but being very authentic when you're engaging. And for those of you that engagement really is defined, and you go like a post, you go comment. So the more you do that on a certain, whatever platform, this is actually across all platforms, the more you do that, the more you engage, the more engagement you'll get. Right? So keep that in mind. And we have that as well on LinkedIn. So if you post something, and I always find it so interesting, you could post something and you'll have 1,200 views and 41 likes. So not everybody wants to be bold and like something, but it doesn't mean people are not seeing it. So keep that in mind right there. So thank you both for that. And could you share if there's some features or techniques on any of the social media platforms that make content more accessible for bilingual users?
Yeah, absolutely. I can highlight a few on Facebook. So one that I wanted to make sure that people know about is that you can write a post from your page in more than one language. So if you go to your page settings, and again, if I have a plug for today, go into your page settings. A lot of your preferences are there. You can really kind of adjust your counts to be exactly as you want in those settings. But if you go to your page settings, you can choose to write a post for your page in more than one language. So people who see your post will see it in the language that's most relevant to them based on their language, which is helpful. The other thing I would share is, we have launched a lot of captions tools in the past few years. We know they're not perfect, but we do have auto captions that you can turn on for videos. You can turn them on for audio on Reels, for stories, for IGTV. You can edit them. So make sure if you're using that to, do a look through, make sure everything's correct. And again, we know that not only bilingual users, but most people are looking at content on their phone, and most people are looking at content sound off. So, I know for me, if there's a video and it doesn't have captions, like it's a nice picture to look at, but I'm probably missing a lot of the context there. And then last, I would just say, don't forget about visual content. Make sure your graphics, if you're creating graphics, especially graphics that you want to be shared, maybe they're infographics or some information relevant to an upcoming event, make sure, that they're also translated and relevant to all of your audience. And then, lastly, you can advertise in multiple languages using our dynamic ads. So don't forget about that piece as well. But we do know that I think it's like over 50% of people on Facebook are looking at a non-English language. So be mindful of that, use captions, and think about designing, not just for bilingual, but also for sound off as well.
And ditto, same. I think the biggest thing is that, yes, you can translate your tweets. It's definitely something we're working on, as well as we know that, most of our users and folks that use our service are across the world and speak multiple languages. So being able to translate those, you can do that as well, but you need to check your settings to make sure you have your primary language set up there so that it'll work for you appropriately. And then also the captions as well, really being intentional about your captions and how you're sharing them, both with your graphics as well. So, if your video is in English, really thinking about, whether your captions are in English as well, or if they're in Spanish as well. So yeah, those are definitely things I think we can get better at. And many of you and all of you in this room can help us do so. So continue to, make those comments on Twitter and really point out and share videos and ideas that we might be able to highlight and share best practices and work with folks on getting better here.
Thank you both for that. So as we say at LinkedIn, +1 to everything you both just said. Emilia, I'm super guilty of that as well. I'm not gonna lie, in bed on my phone, and if there's no captions, I'm just gonna skim over it. So that's super, super important. Thank you both for that. Can you go a little more in depth about branding and why it is important for organizations to adopt or implement a unique branding strategy to attract followers?
Reggie, do you want to jump in first? I feel like I'm always
No, it's okay. I mean, branding is a lot more on the marketing side. Our branding team would be so upset with me right now. But no, I really think, having a unique brand is important, but already just taking what you currently have and making sure that you're utilizing as much of what we call the prime real estate on your profile to share about yourself. And to really make it explicit what your purpose and what your organization is working on is really important. And so that's from your profile picture. If you want to make sure your profile picture is the same across different, all of your different social media sites, so you have the brand recognition there. You want to utilize your cover photo, which is something a lot of folks in organizations don't necessarily utilize. That's prime real estate there when someone's checking out your organization, making sure that your graphics, your colors that you're using are consistent across the board. And then I'll also flag that, you can use your username on Twitter. So this is not your handle, right? You can't change your handle unless you send us a note, and we have to go through a little bit more. But you can change your username to be, whatever such and such organization, #vaccinated is one that we're using. So folks are utilizing that real estate right there to promote particular brands. So you can do so as well. If you have a saying or if you have a theme for the entire year and this is your main campaign that you're running across the board, really making sure that that's a campaign. You can update your profile picture, you can update your name on Twitter as well, so that and your cover photo to all be consistent with that campaign that you're running throughout the entire year. And so we're starting to see folks engage from a brand standpoint on that end. And then also, really, I love to see when organizations are going through a rebrand and they ask for the public's opinion. What do you think? This one, this one, this one, or this one? Like, what are your thoughts? Do you think this is engaging? And so a lot of agencies, creative agencies and brand agencies are recommending that organizations do that as well, to engage their constituents and folks that love and follow their content, to get them involved, and they have a vested stake into choosing what their brand might be. And so just some ideas there, but more important, I think, is, brand recognition, but also, just utilizing what is already available to you, even if you can't afford to go through a complete brand, revamp. I think a lot of times we want everything to be perfect, many of us, and we want to hire somebody to do all of our work, but really thinking about what's going to be the most engaging. And sometimes people just, relate to what can be the most clean and simple and direct, piece of content they can find.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Reggie, your last point is totally accurate. And I think people think of branding as something really flashy that you hire a consultant to do and it takes a long time. But I think really it's just a matter of organizations sitting down and saying, who are we? Who is it that we are in this space, in this social justice movement, and what's the story we want to tell, and who are we telling it to? And so I think if you go into every sort of kind of like campaign or post, or, as you're thinking about how you're showing up on Facebook and Instagram in that way, you'll really have that unique value add. So I think that people are, again, we talked about this a lot, but they're looking for authentic brands, and they're looking for, what they can learn or what they can do. So I would say that when we talk about branding, just making sure to tell your story really loud, really publicly, making sure that it's front and center. As Reggie mentioned, we have a lot of tools to do that, whether it's your bio, whether it's your saved stories or highlights on Instagram, just thinking through how do we always reinforce who we are and why we're here, and what we need from you.
Thank you so much. And I also want to add just, I am not a marketer, but I do talk to a lot of marketers as part of my day job. And so making it simple, as you both mentioned, it's not about you got to invest all this money and going and creating this amazing brand. Sometimes it's just taking action. So even if you have a little video, you get a tiny snippet of that video. You don't have to spend, so much time or money creating additional content. You can just go in that, get that snippet, share that. Maybe there's an article that you want to share. Somebody post it, share that post that you're really aligned with the value around what was being shared. So just little moments like that could also help drive your engagement. So now we're coming to a close, and both of you have shared some really amazing approaches, what to do, what not to do, and the reason why social media is going to be and is very key to driving a lot of these movements. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would just say that it's really, I feel really lucky in my job to be able to work with amazing organizations like LULAC and all of the folks listening in, because truly, like, you are taking these platforms to totally new levels. And it's just a really inspiring time to watch how people are using these tools to advance really important social justice work. So first of all, thank you. And then second of all, I would just say that, now more than ever, especially across Facebook and Instagram, we've created tools that are just meant to be used and meant to be fun and meant to be tried out. So if you're if you're listening and you're thinking, okay, I haven't tried, going live, or I haven't really used Reels, or, something like that, just jump in, just try it. This isn't a space where you have to be perfect or polished or have a 10-page memo before, jumping in, but really just get in there and engage. And and that's it. If I can be helpful, we'll share our resources with you all to make sure you have links to some of those guides that I mentioned, and just really awesome to see all the incredible work that LULAC is doing and continues to do.
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity. My message to so many different groups and activists and organizations have been the same for the past 2 years since we've been at home, which is stay safe and take care of yourself, and stay healthy. That also rest is a form of advocacy as well. And, where you'll be able to do great work moving forward if you can take the appropriate amounts of rest, so that our communities can continue to lean on the great work that many of you and many of the organizations such as LULAC are doing. And so continue to take care of yourself, stay healthy. And of course, you can continue to use all of the great stuff on Twitter. Don't be scared. Jump in there, have authentic, healthy conversations with folks, and use something that you haven't used before, and encourage your friends and family to do so as well.
Thank you for that. So authenticity still remains top of mind. So thank you both for that. You can find any of us probably, I'm assuming, on LinkedIn. So you can find me there if you'd like to do that. Reggie, Amelia, anywhere they can find you?
Of course, on LinkedIn as well. Also on Twitter, you can find me at Reggie McCrimmon, but also for a lot of the resources, we always break news on Twitter. We share everything we have going on directly on Twitter. So you can follow at G-O-V, for a lot of updates on elections, government relations, all that good work. And then also you can follow at nonprofits as well. Check in with those handles and look at the list under those handles. And oftentimes you'll find organizations a part of those lists that are doing some great work, and you can follow them. You can set alerts for elected officials that might be in your region or your area that you want to keep involved with, especially during the health crisis. I would recommend, following some of the official and reliable health organizations and making sure that you're a part of sharing healthy, reliable information during this time.
Yes, and Sandra, I would say, yes, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, and then I'll just share our facebook.com/govtpolitics is our Facebook group. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about how to use these tools, join the group. There are a few screening questions, but you'll be connecting with other people who will also be excited to have you join the conversation.
Thank you both. And after this session, I'm like so empowered and revved up to go create something. So I'm going to use this audience to keep me accountable to that. Thank you all both, and have an amazing rest of the day.
Thank you. Take care.